Venceremos no es solo una consigna, también es tradición que da nombre a una brigada estadounidense de solidaridad con Cuba que durante 48 años ha logrado llegar hasta aquí para aprender y compartir experiencias. Capaces de ver más allá de intereses y luchas personales, estos brigadistas dan a cada visita el matiz de sus vivencias construidas desde diferentes grupos y clases sociales. Cada estancia en Cuba es tan auténtica como irrepetible. Pasaporte compartido con estos brigadistas en el proyecto comunitario sociocultural Cuba. Hoy le presentamos el primer capítulo de una serie dedicada a los hombres y mujeres de Venceremos. ¿Para quién se construye realmente el sueño americano? ¿Cuánto de realidad hay en él? Esta es la historia de Latoya Strong, una joven neoyorquina, profesora de ciencias, para quien este sueño no pasa de ser una estafa exportada al resto del mundo como modelo de vida. Fue la primera de su familia en terminar la universidad y en obtener una maestría. Sin embargo, apenas disfruta los resultados de su esfuerzo. Siendo pobre y sin más opciones para financiar sus estudios, Latoya mantiene una deuda con el gobierno y los bancos privados de su país que hipoteca su futuro.
Coming to Cuba is about understanding from the Cuban people themselves to go back to be able to provide counter narratives to the propaganda that exists in the U.S. But also in the exchanges that we have, given the reality of folks in the United States, because the U.S. has this facade that you can buy all these cars, you can buy all these TVs, you can have these big houses, but education isn't free, and the education that you do receive, the more money you have, and generally if you are white and rich, you get a better education than if you are poor and black or poor and an immigrant. And so in that part of the U.S. doesn't often get told, so being able to complicate the narrative of the U.S. and what happens there, I think is important for me in this exchange here in Cuba. For me to come here, I feel like in the Western Hemisphere, coming to Cuba, it's like going to the future, if that makes sense, because I feel like we have a lot of problems with racism in the U.S., like police brutality. We get murdered by police. Our neighborhoods get police, so we have cameras in our neighborhoods. The police come through our neighborhoods. In New York City, where I live, in the train stations, police. So it's some people can't afford to swipe the subway, so they do what's called jumping the turnstile. So they enter without paying. Police will hide behind walls and wait for those people to give them tickets. So essentially, we're policing people for being poor, for not being able to afford a basic necessity of being able to get to work or to get home.
Pensar en continuar los estudios superiores en una universidad pública en Estados Unidos no es sinónimo de educación gratuita. Es saber que después de esos 5 años de carrera se tendrá una deuda mínima de $200,000 a 30 años pago. Y si la opción es estudiar en una universidad privada, la deuda puede alcanzar hasta $500,000. Esa es la realidad de 43,3 millones de estudiantes en este país que viven actualmente con préstamos educativos, según la Reserva Federal.
En total, yo me gradué con una deuda de $90,000. El interés de mi préstamo es cerca del 3.2%. Es menor que la mayoría de la gente, pero fue porque me gradué antes. Pero eso significa que voy a pagar mucho más al final de los 30 años del préstamo de la cantidad que presté.
Ir a la universidad es la única opción en Estados Unidos para tener un nivel de vida aceptable y por ello el 70% de los estudiantes recurren a préstamos en donde el gobierno funciona como el aval. De acuerdo a la Reserva Federal, al 2015, la deuda total estudiantil ascendía a 1,2 mil millones de dólares, una deuda no condonable.
El préstamo estudiantil no se borra con nada, a menos que te mueras, ¿ok? Es imposible deshacerse de un préstamo estudiantil. Entonces, si es que tú no pagas, te quitan la devolución de impuestos o el Estado interviene en tu trabajo y te quita parte de tu salario para poder pagar este préstamo que tú tienes con una entidad privada.
La expectativa de los jóvenes recién graduados es que al concluir sus estudios podrán optar por un buen trabajo que les ayude a pagar la deuda. Pero la realidad ha sido otra. Los empleos son limitados o los salarios no alcanzan para pagar deudas y vivir. Por ello, algunos jóvenes han optado por olvidarse de una educación superior.
Okay, I will say, so one, there are scholarships, so you can get your school paid for, but not everybody. So we're also forced to compete with people from our own community. So we can apply for scholarships, but there's only a certain amount of funding and only certain people get it. The government do give grants, but it doesn't cover full tuition. And so to cover all of tuition, you have to apply to loans. So the government gives educational loans, but then also private banks give educational loans. The government loans, when you have to pay them back, they're a little more flexible, but private loans, not so much, and the interest rate is higher. Does this make sense? And so there's people who have, like, they graduate college, they have $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 US dollars in debt. Me personally, I have over $100,000 US dollars in debt for school. And so you think about, like, okay, you can buy, like, how am I supposed to, like, live a life when I have to pay that much money back? And so essentially for the rest of my life, I will have to give money to, like, the US government and private banks to pay for an education that I was told would enable me to, like, live this American dream. And that's, you know, it's a lie. So for me, I think it's important to just talk about, like, how the blockade in Cuba is something we have to fight against, because as long as the US can, like, put a blockade on another country, they will continue to do what they're doing to our own communities. And so how do, like, taking back, how do we understand our struggle in connection with the struggle of the Cuban people against the imperialism of the US? I mean, I think there's never a good moment, I think, for the struggle. We just have to keep fighting. I think with the election of President Trump, I think the United States has masked a lot of the problems in the US. So it's like racism is fine, you just have to work hard, and if you have problems because you didn't work hard enough. But I think the election of President Trump sort of lifted the veil and the mask that the US has been able to hide, because he is, you know, a bigot. He's not very knowledgeable in terms of foreign relations and what it takes to be a president and to, like, serve. I mean, no US president really has been that, but I think it has pushed us to work harder. And so maybe people in the US who were in denial about how US society actually worked, the election of Trump sort of made it clear to them what many of us have been saying all along. I think in order for the US to move to a society like Cuba, where we value people, we value community, as opposed to valuing, like, corporations and money and material things, it has to be a whole society. Similar, music and dancing. So for Black people in the U.S., music and dancing is very important. So whenever we're here and we're dancing and we're laughing and we're eating, it feels very connected to what we do at home. And I guess that's, to be resistant, you have to have joy to like keep you going. Differences, I think that here in Cuba, there's much more a focus on community and people. In the U.S., I think capitalism does a very good job at making you only think about yourself and how you will survive. And so coming here and always being reminded on how like we have to center community and center young people. I think here it's all about, whenever we talk to elders here and ask them about the future, many times the response is, I don't know, you have to ask the youth about that, or I don't know, it's up to the youth to decide where this goes. And so that's a difference, I think, between here and the U.S.